I've got some amazing books to share with you guys today. Welcome back to That Cozy Book Nook, everyone. Hi, if you're new, my name is Tori, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys the best books that I read in 2016. These books were not necessarily published in 2016. They are just books that I read between January 1st and December 31st of this year. And because I'm also slightly indecisive, these books are also not in any particular ranking order or anything like that. They are just in chronological order, meaning just how I read them throughout the year by month. I did, however, save the very best book for the end of the video. This book was just one of the best books that I've ever read in my life, so I'll be leaving you in suspense until the end of the video. With that in mind, guys, let's just get comfortable. I don't know how long this is going to be, but I feel a little talkative today, so just go ahead and get comfortable, grab some hot chocolate or some tea, and yeah, let's go ahead and get started. The first book that I read in 2016 that is making this list is, this should come as no surprise, is The Ask and the Answer, and this is by Patrick Ness. This is the second book in the Chaos Walking trilogy. And just to follow it up, the second best book that I read in this year was Monsters of Men, which is the third and final book in the Chaos Walking trilogy. These two books, I'm just going to talk about them together. These two books were absolutely amazing. I can't talk about them too much without spoiling things that happen in the first book because the plot is so big, it's really overarching, and there's just so much that happens throughout the course of these three books. But the main story that is established in the first book, which is The Knife of Never Letting Go, it follows this young boy named Todd, and he is about 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old, and Todd lives in this town where there aren't any women in the town, and all the men in the town can hear each other's thoughts. And so on your 12th birthday in this town, you become a man. But before Todd can, even go through what it takes to become a man in this town, he basically has to run for his life. And when that happens, everything that he's known, everything that he knows about this town is basically shattered. From there, the story just kicks off. From the first few pages of the first book to the very last sentence of this book, it's just non-stop action and just a fun, really good read. Oh man, this is the kind of book that you read and you're like, wow, Patrick Ness is natural born storyteller. I absolutely loved everything about these books. They are binge worthy. What might turn some people off and what almost turned me off from the first book was the fact that this series is told in first person present tense, and I'm not a huge fan of that kind of immediacy while I'm reading. Patrick Ness just handles it so perfectly, and it just works really well for the story, and so it's well worth it, especially by the time you get to these two. It's so good. I love these books so much. Go pick them up. The next book that is making this list that I read in 2016 is The Song of Achilles, and this is by Madeline Miller. This book is awesome. It's telling the story of the legendary Greek hero Achilles, hero of the Trojan War, and a lesser known figure in this myth named Patroclus. And there's so much debate surrounding the relationship that Achilles and Patroclus had. And Madeline Miller just explores their relationship so well, and Achilles and Patroclus in this book, they are training together and they just become really close confidants, and even maybe with the hopes of leading to something more than that. And so when Achilles is called into battle to fight in the Trojan War, Patroclus is kind of by default pulled with him, and just that struggle of friendship and romance and war is just kind of all pulling at these two boys essentially, and affects their relationship and their friendship, and kind of carves the story, the legend that we know of Achilles today. So I love this book so much. Madeline Miller took a lot of inspiration from Donna Tartt, who wrote obviously The Secret History and The Goldfinch, and so just kind of that inspiration also shows in here. And Madeline Miller is so careful with what she writes and just pays such great attention to detail on every single page, and you feel that while you're reading it. And this is a beautiful story, and I highly recommend this book. The next book that's making this list, we're skipping a few months now because The Song of Achilles was in February, and we are going right to September. Everything that I read between February and September is just kind of like meh. This is Since You've Been Gone, and this is by Morgan Matson. This is a young adult contemporary novel, and this is my second one by Morgan Matson. The first one that I read was Amy and Roger's Epic Detour. Absolutely loved it. And you know, contemporary is not a genre, especially young adult contemporary, it's not a genre that I reach for. I love fantasy, I love historical fiction, but there's something about Morgan Matsson's books that are just so heartfelt and heartwarming and just pull me in every single time. And Since You've Been Gone is no different. This book follows a girl named Emily, and Emily, she's really shy, she's really quiet, but she also has this great friendship with this girl named Sloane. They do everything together. They're basically inseparable, and they have what Emily thought to be this great summer planned. And one day, Sloane just up and takes off, and Emily has no idea where she's gone. One day Emily gets a letter sent to her house, and this note has a list of activities on it for Emily to do, and this list was written by Sloane. And just throughout this whole book, you have Emily going through her summer trying to do these tasks that Sloane has left behind for her. While she is slowly trying to branch out of her shell, you're still in the back of your mind wondering, well, where is Sloane? Where did she go? And so that suspense is just kind of like underlying throughout the whole book. And I loved it. If you want to read it, I actually recommend you wait until June, because right now you probably might not get the same feels from it. But I mean, it's great. It just solidifies the fact that Morgan Matsson can write any contemporary book, and I'll just probably pick it up. The next book that's making this list for 2016 is Secrets of a Charmed Life, and this is by Susan Meisner. This is a historical fiction novel, and I'm going to try to keep my description of this book brief because I absolutely loved this book and I can talk about it for a long time. The book follows two storylines. The first one happens in our relatively present day. It follows this American history student named Kendra. And Kendra is studying abroad in England. She's studying history for a semester in England. Before she leaves to come back home, she has the opportunity to interview this elderly woman who survived the London Blitz. And this old woman starts telling a story of two sisters in England during the 1940s. And so that's where our other storyline kicks in, following these two sisters in World War II, London, Emmy and Julia. This is during a time where the children in London are being taken out to the countryside while the war is happening, so they'll be safe. And so when that happens to Emmy and Julia, things are not as black and white as they may seem. There are so many things that happen in this book that are just due to strong motivations and really some selfish tendencies on the part of all of these characters. And it builds up to this incredibly heart-wrenching moment when Emmy and Julia are separated. And this is not a spoiler. This is actually on the synopsis on the back of the book. And when I read that, I'm thinking, oh my God, like that is something I did not want to know. And so now I'm reading the book like angry that I know they're going to be separated. But when you're reading it, that is definitely not, that's not the point of the book. If anything, it's everything that is happening leading up to that moment that is significantly more important. And by the time you finally get to it, like you don't know how they're going to be separated or anything like that. And so by the time you get to it, you are just heartbroken. I've never had such an emotional reaction like that to really anything that I've ever read before. Just feeling your heart actually hurt. So this book goes back and forth between these two storylines, Emmy and Julia, and then Kendra and this old woman. If you are a fan of historical fiction and have not read this yet, this should be at the top of your TBR. All right, guys, so we're getting pretty close to the end of this list now, and I just finished this book a few days ago, and that is The Lies of Locke Lamora, and this is by Scott Lynch. This is the first book in a series. This follows a thief named Locke Lamora, and he is the leader of this band of thieves called the Gentleman Bastards. And these guys are they're making a living based on the things that they are stealing. So that alone makes for a crazy premise. It takes place in this city called Camor, and that alone, Scott Lynch just does such a great job of world building. And this city, you're reading it, and everything, these characters are walking through the streets, and everything around them is it feels so alive and so vivid, and by the time you finish this, you feel like you have lived in this world. It is such an immersive experience. The underlying tension in this book is there is something brewing in the city. There's a war building, and Locke and the Gentleman Bastards are kind of in the middle of that, and so they're trying to reconcile what they are and what they do with the things that are happening around the city. I ended up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars. For the characters. The characters are witty. The writing in here is just so smart, to the point where you are reading it and you honestly, I really didn't know like what was coming next, because these guys, they have a plan they have a plan for everything. They have a plan A, they have a plan B, but it's so unpredictable and so out there that you're like, wow, okay. And it was well done. I loved reading this. It was just a really, really good reading experience and was really one of the highlights of 2016 for me. I will say, if you're going into this, the beginning for me was actually really, really slow. And it took me so long to finish this book. I've been reading this book for a little over a month, but just because it was so slow in the beginning, it took a long time for me to be invested and get pulled in. But once I was just so hooked on it. One of the other things that kind of turned me off a little bit, but I quickly got over it, is the book is structured interestingly. It's told in a series of flashbacks of things that happened in Locke Lamora's past, as well as told obviously in the present day. And so when things started getting good in the present day, it would always switch back to the past. I'm just like, no. So there was always like that interruption that I wasn't ready for. But aside from that though, 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, this was great, and I look forward to reading the next book in the series. We have reached the end of this list, and this next book that I have here, I read this back in February. I wasn't even halfway finished with it, and this book immediately shot to the top of my all-time favorites list. This book was incredibly moving and beautiful in a way that I actually am struggling to put into words. Everybody needs to read this book, and that is Big Fish, and this is by Daniel Wallace. This book follows a man named Edward Bloom who, when he was younger, he was just an extraordinary man. The book starts when Edward is in his older age and he's dying. The story really kicks in when his son William is sitting by his father's bedside and trying to understand the father that he's never really known, because all his life Edward has told these incredible stories about his life and the things that he's done and the people that he's met, and they're so outrageous to the point where you honestly can't discern fact from fiction. And so he's told these kind of outlandish stories his whole life, to the point where it's affected the relationship that he has with his son. And so now that Edward's dying, his son William is taking this final opportunity to try to understand the father that he never really knew. This book is absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. It touches a part of you that you don't even really think about. I don't know if it was a classic case of right place, right time, right person. This is a 10 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this book. It is one of my favorite books of all time. It's charming, but under that there are so many layers of love and relationships and parental relationships. I would 120% tell you to go pick this up right now. Every story in here is super short. It's not a long narrative. It's just broken up into a series of short collections, and each story is about, it could be a page long, a paragraph long, 3 pages long. So they're really, really short. I think everybody has that one life-changing book. I have a few of them, and now Big Fish is definitely one of them. All right, that's it guys. That was the best of 2016 in reading for me. Just one more time in reverse order, we have Big Fish by Daniel Wallace, The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, Secrets of a Charmed Life by Susan Meisner, Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson, The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and lastly, The Ask and the Answer, Book 2 in the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness, and then Book 3, Monsters of Men. This is a long video. I feel like I'm gonna have to do a lot of editing for this. Let me know down in the comments section what your best books of the year were, and if you want to, let me know what were some books that you just probably didn't really care for. I want to hear about all of them. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I truly appreciate it as always. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And until the next video, stay cozy. I'll see you guys next time.